Olivia sat at her kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee as she scrolled through her phone. The morning light streamed through the window, painting golden streaks across the hardwood floor. But she barely noticed. Her heart skipped a beat when a message from Brooke appeared on the screen. "Hey, Sam, Tom is back in town. He wants to catch up with you. Are you open to it?" The words blurred for a moment as Olivia reread them, her pulse quickening. It had been a year since she and Alexander had gone their separate ways. A year of rebuilding herself from the inside out. She had convinced herself she had moved on, had even embraced the quiet comfort of solitude. But now, in an instant, the carefully constructed walls around her heart felt fragile. She exhaled sharply, gripping her phone. A part of her wanted to ignore it, delete the message and pretend she never saw it. But another part, the one that still ached in the silent moments before sleep, whispered, "What if?" Before she could overthink, she typed back, "I'm open to it, let's see how it goes." Her finger hovered over the send button. Then, with a deep breath, she pressed it. The days leading up to her meeting with Alexander were a tangled mix of anticipation and unease. Olivia kept busy, throwing herself into work, distracting herself with dinner plans and yoga classes. Yet the thought of seeing him again lingered like an uninvited guest in the back of her mind. She had spent the past year reclaiming herself, rediscovering who she was outside of their relationship, but the possibility of reopening that chapter stirred something deep inside her. On the morning of their meeting, she stood in front of her closet, staring at the rows of neatly hung clothes, unsure of what to wear. It was ridiculous. Really, this wasn't a date. It was just two people catching up. And yet, as she reached for a simple yet elegant blouse, she knew she wanted to look like the best version of herself, not for him, but for her. The cafe they had chosen was familiar, a place they had frequented when things between them had been easy. As she walked in, Olivia spotted Alexander immediately. He looked different, not drastically, but enough for her to notice. His hair was slightly longer, his posture more relaxed, and when he smiled, something flickered in his gaze. Nostalgia? Regret? She couldn't tell. "Olivia," he said, standing as she approached. "Alexander," she replied, her voice even, though her heart was anything but. The conversation started light, safe. Even, they talked about work, about mutual friends, about the little things that had changed since they last saw each other. But underneath the casual words, Olivia could feel the undercurrent of something heavier, something unspoken pressing against the walls of their reunion. Alexander still had that way of making her feel like the only person in the room. His gaze steady, his attention undivided. It was both comforting and unsettling. Then, just as the silence between them stretched a little too long, Alexander set his cup down and exhaled. "I've been thinking a lot," he admitted, his voice lower now, more measured. "About us, about everything." Olivia's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. She had expected this, but now that the moment had arrived, she wasn't sure she was ready to hear it. "I know I didn't always get things right," he continued, "and I've realized how much I took for granted." His eyes searched hers, waiting for something: acceptance, understanding, maybe even a sign that she had been waiting for this too. But Olivia wasn't sure what to give him, because as much as she had missed him, she had also spent a long time learning how to live without him. The past had a funny way of creeping back in when Olivia least expected it. As she walked through the park one evening, the crisp autumn air swirling around her, she found herself thinking about Alexander's words, the way his voice had softened when he admitted his regrets. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that people could change. But wasn't that the same hope that had kept her hanging on when things had started to unravel between them? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from Brooke. "Have you talked to him?" Olivia sighed, typing a quick response. Yeah, it was complicated. Complicated didn't even begin to cover it. Seeing Alexander again had stirred something inside her, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. There had been warmth in their conversation, familiarity, but also an undeniable weight of the past pressing down between them. As she sat on a bench, watching the last light of the day fade behind the trees, she realized something. the past would always be there. But it didn't have to define her future. And if Alexander wanted a place in her life again, he would have to prove that he deserved it. The weight of uncertainty pressed against Olivia's chest as she sat across from Alexander in the quiet corner of the cafe. The warm glow of the hanging lights softened the tension between them. But it didn't erase it. Stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, she met his gaze, searching for something: certainty, sincerity, maybe even a glimpse of the man she had once trusted with her heart. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," Alexander said, his voice steady but laced with something raw. "I just need you to know I regret everything. Losing you, it was my biggest mistake." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Olivia exhaled slowly, choosing her response carefully. "Regret doesn't erase the past, Alex," she murmured. "It doesn't undo what happened." His jaw tensed, but he nodded. "I know, but I'm not asking for the past, I'm asking for a chance to show you who I am now." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that people could grow. That time could smooth the rough edges of old wounds. But she had learned the hard way that words were easy. If Alexander truly meant what he said, he would have to prove it with actions, not promises. The tension between Olivia and Alexander was palpable as they walked side by side through the quiet park. The crisp evening air carried the scent of autumn, mingling with the distant laughter of passing strangers. A silence stretched between them, heavy yet charged, neither of them quite knowing how to bridge the gap that years of pain had carved. "I know you're scared to trust me again," Alexander finally said, his voice calm but filled with an urgency Olivia wasn't sure how to process. "And I don't blame you. But I need you to know I'm not the same man I was when we ended." She stopped walking, crossing her arms as she studied him, searching for cracks in his sincerity. "And what if I'm not the same woman, Alex?" she asked softly. "What if I've changed too much to go back?" Alexander's gaze darkened, not with frustration, but with understanding. "Then we don't go back," he said. "We move forward wherever that leads us." The sincerity in his voice chipped away at the walls she had so carefully built. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, but in that moment, Olivia felt the smallest flicker of possibility, a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, they weren't entirely lost. The evening was supposed to be simple, just a friendly gathering with mutual friends. A chance to reconnect in a setting that didn't carry the weight of unspoken words. Olivia told herself she was ready. That seeing Alexander interact with others, especially Madison, wouldn't stir anything inside her. But as the night unfolded, she realized how wrong she was. From across the room, she watched as Madison leaned in, laughing at something Alexander said, her hand casually resting on his forearm. It was a small gesture, innocent even, but it sent a sharp pang through Olivia's chest. She forced a smile, nodding along to Brooke's conversation. But her focus kept drifting back to them. Was this jealousy, or was it regret? Brooke, perceptive as ever, nudged her. "You're staring," she murmured, amusement lacing her tone. Olivia sighed, swirling her drink. "I thought I was past this," she admitted, "but seeing him with her, it feels different." Brooke studied her for a moment before offering a knowing smile. "Maybe it's because you're realizing you still care." Olivia looked away, exhaling slowly. Maybe Brooke was right. Maybe this wasn't about Madison at all. Maybe it was about what Olivia was finally ready to admit to herself. The next morning, Olivia woke with a heavy heart, the memory of last night lingering like the final notes of a bittersweet song. She had spent the evening pretending that Alexander's interactions with Madison hadn't affected her. But deep down, she knew better. The way he had smiled at her, the way she had effortlessly claimed his attention, it had ignited something inside Olivia that she could no longer ignore. She needed clarity. She needed to stop avoiding the truth that had been creeping up on her for weeks. So she did the only thing that made sense. She called Alexander. "Hey," he answered, his voice warm, familiar, like an old song she hadn't realized she missed. "Can we meet?" she asked, her pulse quickening. There was a pause, a hesitation that made her heart sink for a moment. But then he said, "Yeah, name the place." An hour later, they sat across from each other at their favorite coffee shop. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, the weight of their history pressing in. Olivia took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. I need to know, are we really just friends? Or are we pretending? And just like that, the moment of truth had arrived. Alexander exhaled slowly, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Olivia's question lingered between them, heavier than the silence that followed. He had always been confident, always known exactly what to say. But now, words failed him. I don't know, he admitted finally, his voice quiet but firm. I don't think we ever stopped being something more. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. She had prepared for every possible answer: denial, indifference, even an apology. But not this, not the raw honesty in his eyes, the vulnerability in his tone. She swallowed hard. Then why did we walk away from it? Alexander let out a small, humorless laugh. Because we were afraid. Because it was easier to let go than to fight for something neither of us was ready for. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto hers. But I'm not afraid anymore, Olivia. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a mixture of hope and fear intertwining in a dizzying dance. So what now? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. Now, we stop pretending, we figure this out, together. And in that moment, Olivia knew this time, they wouldn't let each other go. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting golden light across the quiet park where Olivia and Alexander walked side by side. The air between them was calm, yet charged with the weight of everything they had been through: the heartbreak, the hesitation, the longing that had finally led them back to this moment. Olivia glanced at Alexander, watching the way his jaw tensed, as if he were wrestling with words he wasn't sure how to say. Finally, he stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Olivia, he began, his voice steady but soft. I've been thinking about us, about everything we've gone through to get here. His fingers brushed hers, the warmth of his touch grounding her in a way nothing else ever had. I don't want to keep questioning what this is. I know what I feel. And I know I want a future with you. Her breath caught, the depth of his words sinking into her like waves crashing against the shore. She had spent so long guarding her heart, afraid of repeating old mistakes. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something different, something real. Taking his hand in hers, she smiled. I want that too, Alexander. Life is full of second chances, but they require wisdom, self-awareness, and honest communication. Olivia and Alexander's story teaches us that healing takes time and that rushing into something without addressing past wounds can lead to repeating old mistakes. In today's world, where relationships are often fleeting and emotions are clouded by digital distractions, it's crucial to be intentional in love. If you're rebuilding a connection, ensure it's based on growth, not nostalgia. Learn from past experiences, communicate openly, and don't settle for anything less than mutual effort and understanding. True love isn't just about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person.